What's going on, great people? How are you doing today? I hope you're having a supercalifragilistic week. I hope you're having a supercalifragilistic day. We have made it to Thursday. We have made it to Thursday. Yes, we have. And, entrepreneurship. It's such a fun ride, is it not? It's such an interesting ride. And it's one of those things that you really have to have the tenacity and the endurance to continue to do all the things. I'm not gonna lie, I could use a nap. I could use a nap. But I said, let me get on here and make this video for my people because we're back. This month's schedule is not gonna be necessarily, I'm gonna do some on Tuesdays and then some classes on Thursdays because school's starting back, but I still want to get you this content and I still want to tell you all the cool things that are happening. So just bear with me. You will get the emails. If not, you will have the replays where you can always rewatch. And I'm about to put some of this content on YouTube, so join me on the use of tubes, okay? But we're about to get into it. We're about to get into what is forgiveness? What is this? What is this thing that we were told to do so often? What is it? Just forgive them, forgive them. For me, I was like, okay, I forgive people. But then when I would see the individuals that I forgave, I still have this visceral reaction, whether we wanted to punch them in the face or say something to them, or revenge, whatever the case may be. And I knew if I didn't figure out what forgiveness was and how to navigate that, I didn't want to keep having those stories loop in my mind. I needed relief. And so I began to study forgiveness. I began to study it because I wanted a better understanding. I wanted to implement this. I wanted to heal myself from the situation that I was experiencing. And so as a creative, I just started creating slideshows from the information that I was learning. Not necessarily to teach it to other people, but just to have a better understanding and just take notes on what I was learning. And so, man, who knew it was going to take me down this beautiful road? And who knew I was going to be able to create what I have created? So this is a gift to you. If you're watching me on the Use of Tubes or the Instagram, my workshops are 4-week workshops, 2 hours each, usually on a Tuesday. But again, this month is going to be a little sporadic. Just bear with me because of the fact that school's starting back and I'm getting my daughter reacclimated and some other projects that I've been working on. So it's going to be fun, guys. I'm really excited. Okay. So, they say forgive. Oh, just forgive them. Forgive them and move on. Forgive them and let it go. What the fuck does that mean? What does that even mean? What does that even mean? What does that even mean? How do you even go about doing that? How do I release this response that my body is having when even these people's names are brought up, or the situation is brought up? Or how do I get rid of this story that's replaying in my mind over and over and over? What do we do? Right? These are all the questions that you have. These are the questions that I have, And so when it comes to forgiving, it's really important to understand the importance and the impact that it will have for you. One of the things that I've learned and what I realize is that it's not necessarily for the other person. It's not like you're letting the other person off the hook. The person you're letting off the hook is you. The person you're letting off the hook is you. The person you're letting off the hook is you. The person you're letting off the hook is you. I need you to understand that. I need that to settle in your mind, right? Because yes, you can think thoughts of revenge and it may give you a little relief. But another thing that I realized was that even if you get revenge, you're still going to feel some kind of way. You're still going to have that, I hate this motherfucker. That's a valid feeling. And what you're feeling is valid, especially if you experience abuse and things of that nature. What you're feeling is very valid. And so, as you're playing these different situations over in your mind, what I realize is not the revenge. It may bring you a little, but what you really want is for the situation to have never happened, or for you had to have never met the people, or for you to have never experienced that pain. And so what the person does after the fact is they want that person to feel that pain, that shame, that whatever they feel. They want that other person to feel that. To which I will say, that person's probably already feeling that, which is why they treated you the way that they treated you, because they were feeling that. And so then they just did a transfer of energy and transferred, because if people treat you how they feel about themselves, point blank period. If someone feels good, it is very rare that you'll find somebody that's loving and caring and all genuinely. I'm not talking about performative kindness. I'm not talking about niceness. I'm not talking about performative behavior. I'm talking about when someone is genuinely kind and loving. Think about your favorite teacher, or your grandmother, or someone that is just so loving and so kind to you, right? From a genuine place, you can feel the difference. We are feeling beings, so you can feel the difference. So if someone is performing kindness, or I won't even say kindness, if someone's performing niceness and they do egregious things or mean things or hateful things, that's because that's what is going through their body. That is what they feel. And so when you seek to go and try to make them feel how they made you feel, they're already there. So the absolute best thing you can do, hear me, is to work on your mind, heal your mind, and heal your heart. Okay? Because from the heart is where everything flows from. Okay? So forgiving them is not letting them off the hook. You have every right to get justice. I want you to understand that. If someone does egregious crimes, and if you need to go to the police, if you need to get to a safe space, you have every right to do that. Okay? To keep yourself safe. And once you get to a point where you're like, and I don't ever tell people you have to forgive, but the benefits and the value of forgiving is bar none. There's nothing like it. There's such a your peace of mind is there's just nothing like it. There's no money that could buy your peace of mind. It's just something that is so priceless. And so when you have and understand the value of forgiving because of what it does for you, not necessarily what it does for the other person, but what it does for you, there's no amount of money that someone could come up to you and say, I'm gonna give you $1 million for your peace of mind. You're gonna be like, nigga, you crazy? Are you crazy? And so so just keep that in mind, because a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm letting them off the hook. Da, da, da. If you need to get justice by going to file charges or whatever the case may be, do so. By all means, get justice. And also forgive. And we're going to get into what forgiveness is actually, okay? So, in class you get the slideshows, you get templates, you get, we do hands-on workbooks and things of that nature to really help you understand how to utilize this information and what to do with it, and how to be continuous in these practices so that you reap the tangible results, which is clarity, which is peace of mind, which is better sleep, which is better health, which is better focus. Okay? All of those come from your ability to forgive, release, and let go. Okay? So, the name of this workshop is who do you need to forgive? Transmuting pain into power. Okay? Because once you learn how to transmute that pain, and like for me, I took a collective of different situations because I had a need to want to release and let that go. And then I created these forgiveness workshops for me, and now I gather so much information. I'm like, wow, this could be really a class to really help somebody else learn and heal and just have a better life, okay? All right. So, forgiveness, okay? The way I look at forgiveness is a four-pillar word, right? Grace, mercy, empathy, and compassion. A lot of times we think forgiveness is for the other person, but the first and foremost person that you have to forgive is yourself. But I was a kid when this happened to me. It's okay. And the reason why you want to start with yourself is because you have to forgive yourself for what you didn't know. Maybe you didn't speak up for a situation, where you were abused and you feel guilty. Maybe you spoke up and it caused chaos in your home. Maybe as an adult, you didn't, like for me, I wish I would have went to the police and filed charges when things were going on, and that was a big barrier for me. So I had a lot of grief and shame about that. I'm like, why didn't I? What was I? But when you're in your mind's in a state of chaos, it's really hard to think. It's a challenge to think through situations, right? Because your emotions are so heightened. You're in fight, freeze, or fawn. And so you don't really know, especially like for me, I've never been in an experience like that before. So I'm like, what do I do? Who do I tell? You know what I'm saying? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I remember I kept feeling that, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, where do I go? What do I do? But luckily, I came across a really awesome mentor by the name of Minister Jew, who really taught me some dope techniques. And this was as I'm researching forgiveness, and then I came across him, and that took my forgiveness game to the next level. So grace, you have to give yourself grace. You're going through an experience that is difficult, okay? Mercy, you have to be merciful. Do not beat yourself up. Do not shame yourself for what you didn't know, okay? Grace, mercy, empathy. You can empathize with the person, but really you need to be empathizing with yourself, like, yes, it's okay to feel these feelings. Yes, these are valid feelings that you're having, right? And then compassion, right? We're going to get into what these things actually mean. And one of the things that I learned about forgiveness is that it's not necessarily a rational act, right? It's like, this is crazy. Why should I forgive these people? Because your peace of mind is worth every bit of forgiving this person, so that story is not ruminating in your mind, and so that story doesn't then become ailments and arthritis and all kind of chaos. The name of the game is protecting your mind and your body and your cells, and taking care so that situation, you can wipe your hands of that situation so you don't repeat that situation. You do not want to repeat that situation, right? So you have to get that story and situation out of your mind such that another person doesn't come with the same situation, just a different face, right? Okay. Another thing, you don't have to feel like it. I mean, this is something that I would say it because you really have to have the willpower and the desire to really want to get back to your state of mind. You have to really want and care about yourself enough to really put in the work and the consistency to be actively intentional about what it is you're thinking, okay? And what you're feeling, right? I love the sounds of they're so loud, just like all day, okay? Like the reins of a wild horse, you have to get control, It's like, have you ever seen them trying to train a horse? Initially, when a person gets on the horse, that horse is bucking, it's going crazy. It's like, I don't want to be tamed. I don't want to be tamed. And that's how you feel. I don't want to forgive this motherfucker. That's how you feel. You're like, no, somebody need to beat their ass for real, But as you go through the different steps, then it's like the horse becomes calmer and calmer and calmer. And what you're really trying to do is calm down your ego, because your ego is now wounded, and so now the ego is doing what it's trying to do best, and it's trying to protect you. Okay? And your body knows when things are out of whack. That's why you have a visceral response. That's why, how they say, if you kick a dog, it's eventually going to fight back, right? And so that response that your body have is like, you love yourself enough subconsciously to know that the way that you're being treated and what's going on is not okay. So this is why you're having that reaction and that response. Okay? So your feelings are valid. Your reaction is valid. But you want to be able to, if you're still in the situation, you want to be able to safely remove yourself from the situation. If you're no longer in that situation, now you're to the point where you're actively healing. This workshop is for you. You've gotten to the point where you're actively healing. this workshop is for you. If you're still in the thicket of it, it's going to be really hard to heal in the same space. I had to move completely, you know. So here we go. So what it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of mental strength to be able to forgive, release, and let go of a situation. You're very strong in the mind to be able to do that and move on and have not repeat the situation and have healthy whatever moving forward, right? Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. You don't ever have to see them motherfuckers ever again. And that's a beautiful, fun part of this. You don't ever have to speak to them again. You don't ever have to be around. It is solely your choice. Now, if it was something that was a small offense and you're like, okay, I want to reconcile, if you have that mental capacity to do that and that person changes for the better, cool. But it does not, forgiveness does not require reconciliation. Okay, you have every right to be like, I will never talk to that motherfucker again. Okay, you don't have to wait for an apology. Even I made this mistake, waiting for an apology, thinking like, okay, this person will. No, you don't have to wait for an apology. Let them go. You know, because everybody doesn't have the capacity and doesn't have the mental strength to really come back and admit that what they did was not okay. Some people like to live in that, and you got to let people. And another thing, all these people hear people say is they're going to go off and treat somebody else like that. Well, get your mind strong enough. What this forgiveness workshop will do will get your mind strong enough to where you can even send out protection energy around those people. But also, you don't even know if some of those people getting in those situations are even good people, because you don't know how people have treated people in the past. So the best person that you can focus on in this situation, honey, love, my dear, is you. You, yourself, and you. You can be 1,000%, 1,000,000% selfish in this situation when it comes to forgiving. You know, you can. You don't have to be the heroes. People have got to learn to be their own heroes and take care of their own and pay attention to their own signs and things like that. But you don't know what people have done that will put them in that situation to where they will meet people that are like whatever they're like. You understand? Okay. That's not excusing the behavior. Again, I said if you need to go file charges or if you need to, whatever you need to do to get justice within reason, without the retaliation, this is not an excuse for the behavior. Your feelings are valid, okay? This is why anytime you have that response, you know, it's like, this is not right. I know that my word when I realize something is off is like, am I tripping? The second I have to ask myself, am I tripping? Then I know I need to reevaluate situations. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. It's not something that can happen immediately. It took me 2-3 years to really realize, okay, I've really forgiven this situation and I've really let it go, you know. But what I realized I was not going to do, once I realized what I was experiencing, once I realized, okay, this is something very serious, this, whatever, you know, I don't even want to talk about it because I'm so far removed from the situation, but I do want to give you guys examples. So, I was putting in different symptoms and things like that and different things that I experienced. And I was reading other people's similar experiences. Oh my goodness. Because one thing I realized about, we can call them mental health disorders, but when you put a name to it, when you call it like a demon, it makes you realize that we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but people are really possessed by entities, you know? And it made me realize that entities have habits of behavior. This is with the DSM-5. You have a group of behaviors that have created a mental dysregulation, okay? And within that mental regulation, it causes certain behaviors and it causes people to behave in certain ways. These things can be healed. Why? Because there's a polarity. Everything has a polarity, okay? So, When you call it a demon, it makes you very geared up to want to get that spirit, that entity up out of you, because nobody wants to walk around with that. Okay? So as I'm reading about all these people, 12, 20, 30 years, I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Listen, I gave myself a time limit. I said, once we get, listen, this is it. And that's another thing that really will work in your favor. Giving yourself time limits for certain emotions and things like that to make sure that you do not get in a cycle of stagnation. Okay? So, forgiveness is not only for big offenses, it's for little offenses too. What and to what would be considered a little offense to someone can be considered a big offense to someone else. Because one of the things I asked myself was, when I experienced what I experienced, I was like, have I ever made anyone else feel like this? And then I went and I called people and I had conversations, and people told me of things that I've done to hurt their feelings. And to me, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was such a big deal. Like, I apologize. I sincerely apologize, because I didn't see it as, but to them, it really hurt their feelings. So, I was like, that's such a minor, that's in my mind, but I had to realize that this is that person's experience, and, wherever they've gone through in their life, that, that's something big to them, and I cannot discount their feelings. And so then I apologize. An apology is something that we do in the very last class, right? Teaching people how to apologize. I'll teach you how to apologize sincerely. Okay, only for big offenses. No, a one-time event. No, sometimes you have to forgive people over and over again. Sometimes you got to forgive yourself. Let's start with self. You have to forgive yourself over and over again. And as long as you're able to forgive yourself over and over again, genuinely, and here's the thing, when you genuinely forgive yourself, the likelihood of you making that mistake again maybe is very slim, but it's not something you're going to have to do over and over and over and over and over. But forgiving yourself, getting yourself in the habit of saying, I forgive you, I release, I let go. Saying that to yourself, okay? And then saying it to other people and releasing those offenses, okay? We talked about reconciliation and resuming the relationship. You don't have to do that. And again, it's not a pass for them. It's not excusing the behavior. It's just saying, this energy, this entity no longer has dominion over my mind and my heart, right? That's what you're initially saying. And you're stopping that stagnation. You're stopping stagnation, because stagnation will happen if that story is replayed over and over and over, right? It'll create a feeling of being stuck, and that you don't want to get to that point. You want to get to a point where you have the willpower to let go of that narrative. And eventually you'll get to the point where you won't even think about those situations. You won't think about those people. You won't even be in those space. It'll be completely transforming for you, right? And a lot of times people thinking by forgiving is saying that what happened is acceptable. That's not what you're saying. Forgiving is saying, I'm stopping the loop of the story in my mind so that I can move on with my life and let this situation go. That's what forgiving is, okay? You are acknowledging that holding on to resentment only harms yourself, okay? So instead, it means letting go of the anger, the resentment, and the desire for revenge associated with the memory. Remembering an event can still coexist. Remembering an event can still coexist with forgiveness, right? Forgiveness is about your own peace of mind and emotional well-being, and can be achieved regardless of whether the offender acknowledges the wrongdoing or not. Forgiveness is such a gift because it does not require the other person to apologize. It just requires you to be consistent in knowing that you no longer have a desire to ruminate on the situation. Okay? Sweet, sweet, sweet. When you release and you let that situation go, you will no longer have a desire to tell that story over to anyone ever again. When you release the story, you will no longer have the desire to tell that story to anyone ever again. And the more that you can let that go, you'll even start to forget. Because what happens when you put it on replay, it's hard to forget. It's hard to forget about the names, the places, the situations. But as you release and let go, and the less you tell the story, and you get to the point where you don't even tell the story anymore, you can eventually get to the point where you don't even release people's names, their faces. But it all depends on you, your mindset, your attention. Your body may keep the score. Like, you may be in a space and say a person's name is mentioned, or you may see a person, you may get a visceral response, but you don't live there. You're able to be like, okay, you know what? I've let that go. I'm over that. I've moved on with my life, right? Forgiveness is all about inner peace. It is all about, oh man, there's just nothing like it. Once you get your mind back to a place of homeostasis, of calmness, of letting situations go, there's just nothing like it. It's just such you can think better, you have clarity, you can get more done, you're more creative, you're healthier, you can spend that time. Because think about it, if that story is continuously playing in your mind over and over and over, it doesn't really leave room for new things to come in, right? And so if your mind is a computer, right? Computers are a copy of your mind, and you only have so much space within your mind. If it's been taken up by all the past traumas that all the other people have done and all the different things and all, where is there room for new things to come in? And a lot of times this affects your money. Like I said, it affects your money, your health, your creativity, your sleep, right? So once you're able to get that out, then you'll create new pathways. Your mind will be able to create new neurons and create new things. But as long as you're holding on to this and that's taking up all your mental space, it's going to be hard to manifest your desires and your dreams, okay? Repeatedly choosing to forgive helps solidify your commitment to letting go of resentment. Every time I do this class, I let go more and more and more. Even if I feel like I've let it go, every time I do this class, it's like a relief that I feel even more. It's like, oh man, because it's nothing like looking back on where you've been and what you've experienced and be like, damn, I didn't even think I was gonna get through that shit, cuz look at me now. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing like that compared to that feeling of being able to let a situation go and seeing where you once were and where you are now. You look back and be like, ugh, like, wow, I can't believe I really went through that and I really made it through. So yeah. And so another thing, when we're talking about forgiveness, not just being for big offenses, like the more you practice forgiveness, like even when I'm driving and somebody does something dumb, like cut me off in the street, or somebody says something wild to me, and my initial reaction would be like, you know what, I forgive you. I let that shit go. The more you even practice it on a smaller scale, if someone does something on a larger scale, it'll be a lot easier for you to forgive. And even if you do something small, like, oh man, I was late for that meeting, instead of like being down on yourself, be like, you know what, I forgive myself. I forgive myself. I'm going to make sure that I'm on top of my schedule from now on. I'll make sure I don't be double booked. So when you're able to forgive yourself in these smaller spaces, then it'll become easier for you to forgive like bigger things, and forgive yourself for bigger things, and forgive others for bigger things. And the easier it is for you to forgive yourself, the easier it'll be for you to forgive others, because you'll be able to empathize that, man, and you'll be like, damn, that's how they have to live. I'm grateful that I get to choose. And that the power of choice, baby, let me tell you, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But the power of choice and being able to choose and say, you know what, I could be like that, but I don't want to. I want to be like me. I want to, because here's the thing. If you ruminate long enough on the behavior and the things that other people have done, you eventually become like that subconsciously, because it's playing over in your mind and you're programming your subconscious mind with that behavior. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is transmute. Okay? And when you program yourself with like love, compassion, empathy, grace, mercy, then you say to yourself, this is what I'm capable of. I don't have to be like that, man. Like, man, I don't know how they're raised, but I'm glad that I get to choose different for myself. Because some people are so far and so stuck in that, they do not get to choose. That entity has taken over their complete self. And they're so far removed from love, compassion, mercy, empathy, and grace that they cannot see how their actions are impacting others. And they're just out here willy-nilly, and then they wonder why they can't hold on to friendships and relationships, and why their life seems so chaotic, and they're always playing the victim because they're victimizing other people. And so they're always in situations where they're the victim. As above, so below, as within, so without. You know, your life is a mirror of what you have going on internally, okay? Expecting immediate forgiveness can create additional pressure and impede genuine emotional recovery. So, again, it can take some time. Be patient with yourself. This is where the grace comes in. Forgiveness is grace, mercy, compassion, and empathy, okay? So give yourself grace. You're not going to happen overnight, especially if people did. Sometimes people's trauma has been over a lifespan, and they have to go in and really reprogram their whole entire being, their whole entire mind. Forgiveness is literally it's like when someone, like, you have a computer and then someone puts a virus on the computer. It doesn't just take like 10 minutes to clear the virus. You have to take that to a specialist. Therapy, forgiveness workshops, life coaches, and you have to literally rebuild that, like really wipe that virus out, make sure all the files and things like that, and rebuild that computer system, right? Sometimes they have to wipe everything off the computer and then put the programming back on. And I think a lot of times that's what they used to say. I used to work at Best Buy back in the day, and that's what they would have to do: take everything off, wipe the virus, and upload whatever it was, Microsoft, Apple, re-upload that to the computer. And so, same thing with your mind. It's going to take time. You have to rebuild. You're rebuilding your self-esteem and your confidence, brick by brick, day by day, affirmation by affirmation, you know. And you're also rebuilding trust within yourself, because when you go through situations, especially if things happen to you as a child, you may not even had an opportunity to make that connection of trust within yourself. And so some people have to start from scratch when it comes to confidence and things of that nature, self-awareness. And so you have to give yourself grace and time to really rebuild. You're essentially creating a brand new relationship with yourself, and that's okay. That's okay. Be patient with yourself, okay? Okay, so there's an enormous physical burden to being hurt and disappointed, says Karen Schwartz, who's a medical doctor of the mood disorders adult consultation clinic at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Chronic anger puts you into fight or flight mode, which results in numerous changes in the heart rate, the blood pressure, the immune response. These changes then increase the risk of depression, heart disease, diabetes, and among other conditions, which creates what's called abnormal cell growth. What do we know that as? Cancer, along with other things. Excuse me. The second that you decide to forgive, your body immediately responds. Your cells immediately begin to feel relief. Immediately, okay? And when you're consistent in that practice, and you learn things like breath work to calm your nervous system, your shoulders will relax, you won't have that tension in your heart and your chest. How do I know? Ask me how I know, okay? Forgiveness, however, calms stress levels, improves immune system, boosts mood and it boosts your mood, leading to improved health, okay? So it isn't just, when people are talking about the impact of trauma, it's not just something that's like, oh, okay. It doesn't just happen mentally. It literally can take a physical toll on your body. This is where cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, liver failure, kidney failure, all these things are coming from repressed trauma that is held within the body that has not been released, okay? You ever meet somebody that's always sick, or always got something going on, always got some congestion or some type of sickness going on? It's coming from unexpressed trauma. People that don't speak up for themselves. throat issues, things of that nature. You can tie every ailment back to an unchecked or repressed thought, okay, or feeling, right? So, according to Barbara O'Neill, you can look her up on YouTube. She's an Australian health and wellness teacher, right? She teaches about natural herbs, remedies, and things of that nature. She talks about how, and she shows a visual, and in my class I show a visual of how a cell will begin to create these little thorns on it called abnormal cell growth, right? So when you're hanging on to these things, grief, anxiety, discontentment, remorse, guilt, distrust, all the things that can come from traumatic experiences, it literally breaks down your life force. It breaks down your life force energies, and it causes your body to begin to decay, right? And if you look at, oh my gosh, there's pictures of women of when they were in relationships versus when they were out of relationships, or they left like abusive partners and things like that. And honey, it is like night and day. When I say people are look completely different, okay? It is absolutely wild. You can actually see the like one picture where there's like no life, and the other pictures as women have healed and gone on with their life, and they're just beautiful and they're glowing. I remember when I finally like snapped out of what I was going through. One of my homeboys, he was like, "Oh my God, you're glowing," and I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Whatever you've been doing, keep doing." And it was crazy because it was the week that I finally was like, "Okay, I'm letting this go. I'm not speaking about it anymore. I'm not." And he was just like, "Whatever you're doing, you are absolutely glowing." And I was like, "Okay, wow, So I noticed it. I mean, I noticed that I felt better, but other people telling me like that I'm glowing. Some people thought I was pregnant. I'm like, I'm not pregnant. Because they say when people get pregnant, they have a glow. But anyways, okay. So when you're in that state of unforgiveness, or you're still holding on or replaying that traumatic experience, that keeps you in fight or flight, freeze or fawn, right? And that keeps your adrenal glands aroused, right? Because when you're in that state, you want to fight back, but then you don't want to deal with nobody. You're like, you want to run because you want to get away from the situation. All of these things are causing, every time you have a different emotion in your body, you're creating a different chemical within your body. Your body is like this really dope scientific thing, right? It's just really cool. So when your emotions change, your body is creating different chemicals. But if you're in a heightened state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, then you're exhausting your adrenal glands, because they're ready for like, what we doing? What's up? Somebody is always ready to pop. That's what your adrenal glands are doing. And so it's exhausting, and that's what causes you to feel so tired, exhausted, depressed, anxious, because your body is running it's like a cheetah. A cheetah's only meant to have a burst of energy for a short period of time, right? It's not meant to be for long periods of time. When you think about big cats, they can only go for a short period of time and catch the prey, then it's back down to calm. Now imagine a cheetah's just going. It's not meant for that. It's not meant, your adrenal glands are not meant to be going nonstop, right? It has physical consequences. And so you'll get things like high blood pressure, migraines. I know for me, I had excruciating chest pain that I thought I was having a heart attack. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I couldn't sleep a certain way. I couldn't lay a certain way. I was just like, oh my God, this is not, like, because I was going back and forth between being like, fuck that. If this is how people want to, like, no, I don't want to be like that. But no, fuck that. If this is how people want to be, I'll be like that. And every time I was on that rah-rah, I could feel the tightness in my chest. I just felt, I was clenching my jaw. I just felt like I could feel it in my body. You know what I'm saying? And so it was affecting my heart. And I realized, I said, this is not sustainable for me. This is not how I want to live. I like living like a lady. I don't like living like a banshee. Okay? I don't like living like them. Okay? That's just not for me, right? So, Another thing that my body was experiencing, foul, like eczema. I was getting patches of like eczema and things like that because my body is trying to get rid of this chemical response that it's having. So it was literally changing my physicality. And I said, oh no, I can't have that. I cannot have that. I like to model. I like to walk the runway. So I have got to remain. I've got to keep my cute baby. Okay. So, all right, all right, all right. Studies have found that acts of forgiveness can reap huge rewards for your health, lowering the risk of heart attack, improving cholesterol levels, sleep, reducing pain, blood pressure, things like that I've already said, okay? Okay, what happens to your body when you forgive? It's like pruning a garden, okay? You're pruning a garden. So one of the things, the techniques that you can do is when those thoughts come up, or that situation comes up, or that feeling comes up, you're going to take it to your imagination, because your imagination is what's holding all the power. Okay, your imagination and your attention. One, you don't want to, like for me, I ain't going to go on nobody. Hold on one second. Ooh, that happened in a while. I'm kind of sad. One of my plants over there is, I just now realized it's not doing so well, so I have to go and buy some life back into it, and this one too. Sorry, I don't mean to get distracted. I hadn't watered it a little bit longer. Anyways, let me focus. I'm focused. I'm back. I'm just concerned about one of my plants. Sorry, guys. I love my babies. I went to the prop swap and got these, and I've been so in love with my plants, as you can see. They're really doing well, but I have a couple of them that are looking kind of sickly, so I'm trying to stay focused because I know I need to. I'll tend to them here shortly. Okay, so as we're talking about plants, let me circle back. So you have to prune your thoughts and your feelings, right? So the way that I like to think of my mind is like a garden. So when things come up, and they try to sneak back up and they try to create a certain feeling and they try to plant a seed in my mind, because I understand how powerful my imagination is and I understand how powerful my attention is. I'll come back to attention in a second. But when it comes to my mind, I imagine myself as a gardener. When a negative thought comes, I take some scissors and I cut it. But if that situation tries to come up, I cut it. If those feelings try to cut, I cut it. I prune. I literally imagine myself pruning a garden. And that's a technique that I want you to take and use. Or you can come in and you can create your own technique. You can come up with your own technique. But that's one that I like to use because it's really important to know and understand the connection between imagination and healing, right? So utilizing that space to go in, clip, 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 gather, throw away. So those things can no longer grow, right? We have to make the conscious choice to forgive, which is cleaning up our system and cleaning up our garden, okay? Attention, one of the things that you want to not do. This is another story for another day about how social media, I feel like, is connected, is doing some wave shit, because you'll be feeling some type of way and you get on social media and that shit will pop up on your feed, which is really wild. Delete it immediately. Do not play and go into that rabbit hole, which will take you down a rabbit hole and have you thinking and ruminating over those thoughts again. You have to nip this in the bud. You have to be so intentional about your healing. You have to be so selfish about your mind, right? It is imperative. If you want to heal, you have a choice, and you have to build up your willpower. Another way to build up willpower, take your ass to the gym. Go to the gym, work out. This is going to strengthen your willpower, right? Because you're doing something that's going to take, that you don't get immediate results. It's going to show you how things progress, okay? So be very mindful of that. Be mindful of your social media. Don't be watching those things that be like, oh, I know that, I just experienced. No. If you experience something, tell one person, your closest person that you know is going to help you, going to sit with you. give you compassion, give you the empathy, give you the love that you need. But going into, because what's going to happen if you go start telling all these people, guess what you're doing now? You're planting a whole bunch of seeds, and guess what is going to be harder to do? Because now you've made this connection with other people through this story, this experience, right? Now, if you have taken this experience and transmuted it, and now you're able to tell from a place of power versus just the pain, then you can utilize that story. But for me, I don't even want to tell the story. I don't even want to talk about them people no more. I don't even want to remember these people anymore, you know? So for me, it's a lot more powerful for me to teach forgiveness versus revamping that story, because I don't like how it makes me feel, okay? And I'm protective of how I feel. I'm protective of how I think. I'm protective of how I feel, because I have to protect my heart. This is my baby, okay? This is my baby. That's my baby. So, prune your garden, prune your garden, prune your garden. Be a gardener. If you have something else that will work for you, come up, be creative, and come up with your own. If not, use this system of imagining yourself. The negative thought comes in, you get your big old garden scissors, and you're like, I don't got time for this today. Nope, 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 nope. And then you replace it with other happy seeds. Oh man, I'm so grateful I got that raise. Oh, I'm so grateful for, I just got that check for 5,000. Oh, I'm so grateful that my family's coming. But you replace it with something else. Once you remove something, replace it with something positive, okay? Okay, and here's another thing. Once you begin to forgive and you make that immediate choice, your lymphatic system will literally go in there and begin to clean up those thorns on those cells that was creating abnormal cell growth. Isn't the body so awesome? Okay, you have 1 trillion of these nerve cells, and so once you make the decision and you begin the process of forgiving, releasing, and letting go, those little thorns, the lymphatic system will go in there and it'll start to clean that up. It'll start cleaning up all those little thorns, okay? So one of the things that I want you to do, I want to ask yourself, what do you imagine forgiveness will feel like? How do you think you forgive? I mean, how do you think you'll feel once you've let all the stuff go? Where do you see yourself, in a week, 2 weeks, a month, a year? Where do you see yourself? After you've overcome this situation, where do you see yourself? I want you to focus on that. Okay, I want you to write that down. I want you to think about that. Like what would it feel like? If it's coming from, and I'll use relationships because that's a lot of things that people are really out here healing from. Parental relationships, intimate relationships, sibling relationships, family relationships, ships on the rocky seas of life, You gotta have them, but sometimes you be like, God damn, motherfucker, your ship got some holes in that bitch. I don't want to be on that motherfucker with you, right? So, in terms of relationships, like, do you see yourself moving on and being in a healthy relationship, having taken what you've learned from this experience and now turning pain into power and now having created a healthy relationship? Do you see yourself doing that? Do you see yourself happy and just, being able to communicate better? Like, what can you take from the experience, transmute, learn from, and where do you see yourself in the future? All right. And that's where we're going to stop at, That's where we're going to stop at tonight. Initially, this is a 2-hour class. But we're going to stop on that note tonight because it is time for your girls' bedtime. It's time for me to rest, okay? So next week, we'll come back and we'll continue that problem of what does forgiveness feel like. And you can share what forgiveness feels like to you, okay? And then we'll go and break down what forgiveness does in the brain. I'll leave you with this quote. To err is human. And one of the things that when studying the Bible and other books, it's like that he who's out saying cast the first stone. Sometimes you don't want to hear that shit, but at the same time, it makes you and reminds you that nobody on this earth is perfect. So even you have hurt people's feelings and done things that have caused people to feel some kind of way, right? And to err is human, to forgive is divine. Forgiveness is not necessarily about justice, it's about freedom, freeing your mind, freeing your heart, okay? It's about mental, physical, and emotional freedom, all right? Well, I hope that you have gained some great knowledge tonight from this. It is my bedtime. Your girl is winding down, so I hope you guys have a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious evening. I hope you rest well, stay in joy, keep your heart light as a feather, and yeah, I love you. Be easy. Peace.